Well, guys, we are back with another episode of the Impactus podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm joined with Dean and Chris as usual. Guys, how are you guys doing?
Doing well. Good to be back on the podcast and having another conversation. How are you, Chris?
Yeah, really good. I'm excited to be here. And we're into fall now, full swing, and Impactus is in full swing. Family's into full swing, and life is busy, but good.
Yep.
It's funny. I heard someone say that like becoming an adult is basically perpetually saying things slow down after next week.
Right.
But they just never slow down. And so we just finished on, I guess, Monday of this past, this week we were finished. By the time this recording comes out, it'll be a couple weeks ago, but we just finished our summit, right? Which is our men's ministry leadership summit, where we train men's leaders. Dean, you were there. Chris, you were on Zoom. What did you guys think about that event?
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was our fifth one, and I think it just the content seems to get better and better, and just really good to connect with leaders, just helping them launch into the fall, their ministries. And I was really impressed by the wide range of guys we had from literally around the world joining the summit. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was fun to see in the comments as people were weighing in that they were, from Canada, of course, and the States, but also, Malaysia and Africa and different places. That was pretty awesome. And you guys did a great job running it. It all just felt very smooth and just a really well done night. And the content I thought was phenomenal. The speakers did great. And it was just really good, deep, rich, interesting teaching.
Yeah, it's good. And we're we're only under 6 weeks away from our Brampton conference here in the GTA. And so that, of course, comes with all sorts of planning and excitement. But we're also I'm just thinking of our own home lives. My daughter Poppy's only in senior kindergarten, but already we're seeing birthday parties, extracurriculars. And I don't know about you, Chris, but you still got kids in school? Is it crazy nowadays with programming?
It's nuts. And my kids are just hitting. My daughter's in grade 9, my son's in grade 8. They're both involved in activities as well as youth at the church and different things. But I did the math last week and we did 30 drives last week, either to drop someone off or pick someone up, including school in there. And so I'm just a full-time driver right now, basically. I kind of work for Impactus, but mostly I just drive my kids around. That's what I do with my time.
Yeah. Can you bring me to the airport tomorrow, by the way?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, you had 4 girls, Dean. You must have had that to the extreme.
Oh man. Yeah. We're almost empty nesters. So those days are pretty much in our rearview mirror. But oh man, those days when all of them were in school and night activities and programs and sports and lessons, you name it. I was a glorified taxi driver. It was, lots of driving, lots of conversations, lots of nights out of the house. It was hard and tiring. And yet I miss it now looking back.
Yeah.
It's funny that people keep telling Rachel and I, even just in the midst of parenting 3 small kids under 4, is oh, you'll miss these days. And so every now and then when we're in the throes of it, we'll laugh at each other and be like, can you believe one day we will miss this? But it's all perspective. It's all zooming out. Right. And so, well, Dean, it's kind of, we're talking about schedules and kids and extracurriculars. You recorded the podcast this week, and tell us a little bit about what the conversation is today and who you were speaking with.
Yeah, I had a great conversation with Ed Uszynski and Brian Smith. They're the authors of a book called Away Game. And it's a really unique topic. I heard it on another podcast, got kind of connected to the book. And I thought this is really intriguing. And it's kind of a guide to help parents how to disciple their kids through sports and activities. And I don't know if I've heard many conversations or certainly read much about that. Both those guys are involved with Athletes in Actions. They've been involved for years. Very sharp guys, just a great conversation around that. And the funny thing was, Ed had just had surgery the day before and didn't want to miss the podcast and did it from a hospital bed, as you'll see in the interview. Wow. So that was fun, but I love the conversation. It brought me back just in my own recollection of, all the things we were involved in. And I think the kind of conversation started with like the problems that parents can encounter or even create with activities to how do we actually leverage sports and activities to disciple our kids?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, I don't know about you guys, but we have, like I said, three small kids, and Poppy played soccer with the town this summer, and I truly thought, like for the most part, that parents would just be like super chill. I mean, it's glorified daycare, like they're just on the field running in circles. But there were a few moments where I thought, like, wow, that parent is getting really invested in the soccer skills of their young, and just shouting from the sidelines or whatever. But um yeah, I don't know, have you guys had much experience with that, like with your own life? Maybe did you guys grow up playing sports or your own kids?
I think for me, so my daughter's a competitive dancer. She's not into sports, but she, yeah, lots of practices each week, traveling around the province for competitions and things, and you definitely see that side of it. I'd like to think my wife and I are pretty chill about the whole thing, but you see those parents who are either really upset that the kid didn't do as well as they thought they should have done, or and this comes up in your interview a little bit, Dean, and in the book, that I think as parents sometimes, we want to be careful where we're not letting our insecurities and things come out, or our the dreams we had of being, great at sports or being a dancer or whatever it is, come out through our kids and putting that pressure on them. And I always just kind of feel for those kids, right? Like whenever I would see a kid when my kids were small playing soccer or whatever, and their parents were screaming at the sideline, the kid wasn't usually on the field going, "Oh, I'm so proud of my parents in this moment," right? Like they usually looked embarrassed and they just wanted it all to be over. So yeah, it's definitely there, and I think to be aware of it, right? Which is, I appreciate where these
Mhm.
guys go in their teaching on the subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably all seen the viral clips online, a parent who loses it in the stands or, and it seems even just violence at sports games and things are just like common now. And so just how do we manage that as parents? And like yourself, Chris, my daughters were in pretty competitive dance kind of things as well, and so I saw that intensity with parents at times. It was like both the pressure on kids, but also the reaction to if their kids weren't, in their estimation, being treated well. It was
Mhm.
like, whoa, it was a little scary. I actually, in the Globe and Mail just a couple of weeks ago, came across an article by David Robertson, and he really kind of summed up what this kind of conversation's about. I'm going to read this quote to you. He said, "At the end of the day, youth sports aren't about the standings, the goals, or even the trophies. They're about the people our kids become while they're
Hmm.
playing and the people we are modeling for them based on how we conduct ourselves as we cheer them on. Arenas are just classrooms with colder floors. Our jobs as parents isn't to be the loudest voice in the building, it's to be the steady one our kids can count on, win or lose." I thought that captured it really well.
Hmm.
And this is that article didn't come from a faith perspective but this article really kind of goes there, and how can you both model what it means to be a disciple of Jesus, but how can you use those moments to disciple your kids?
Yeah, I'm just thinking that what I love about that quote was two things. First of all, the idea that your kid is becoming something, right? Like we are all being formed into something. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of what. And I think sometimes, I don't know, I can even live kind of vicariously or think or dream about who I want my kid to be formed into. And funny, like, of course, I want them to be of good moral character and be godly and things like that. But if I'm, it's easy for me to point out at the parents around the sidelines, but if I were to look inward and just think for a moment, yeah, I do daydream a little bit that maybe they might be a really successful, whatever. And it's really important, I think, as parents to like just pause for a moment and say, my kid might not go pro, but he will become someone.
Mm-hmm.
And the becoming is much more important than, what they will do. Dean, I'm curious, from your conversation, is there anything that really stuck out to you from that you just, really impacted you as you're chatting with the guys?
Yeah, there was one piece as I read the book, but in the interview, and I raised it with them, that one of the most significant discipleship moments is the drive home after like the game. Okay, a lot of parents will use that moment to either like, instruct their kids of what they could have done better, or kind of, lean a little heavy on their kids. And they just talk about how we can take the pressure off our kids in those moments and use them as opportunities just to let them breathe, to be themselves, and be way more intentional. I thought that was just a profound insight that I wish I had thought of, when I was parenting our kids when they were younger. I just thought, that was just one example of many practical ways that parents can leverage, the activities and the opportunities, because they do go fast. And I have the sad, opportunity to look back now and wish I had done some things differently in those moments. And that's why I loved about this book. Like this, I wish I had this when I was parenting the kids when they were at that age.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a viral video out there with Jeff Daniels. You can Google it if you just Google Jeff Daniels sports, and it's just him talking about when he was a dad and driving to the hockey rink at 6 a.m. and going to the tournament out of town and everything. And he just said the whole thing as a dad, it's not about the game, it's not about the sports even, it's about the drive at 5:30, heading out of town for the tournament, where you talk about anything but sports, right? And you let your kids set the agenda, and it's just the time that you're spending with them, right? So there are these precious dad moments available that have nothing to do with the outcome of the game. And like you said, Jordan, like 99.99999% of these kids aren't going pro, right? It's not really even a question of if they will. Most of them won't. But there's these incredible dad moments, family moments along the way that are so important.
Yeah, and I think go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, sorry. It just reminded me of my personal kind of story out of that. Just from my professional hockey career. But I started minor hockey as just a young kid and got all excited about it. And my dad would do the 5 o'clock, in the morning on Saturday mornings. It was brutal getting up at that time, but I started, and within just a few months, I had to quit because I was having these severe migraines and I couldn't continue. And I look back on those days, and my dad didn't put any pressure on me. He didn't make me feel bad. He kind of just, supported me through that. And we found other ways to get involved with other sports and things. But I think, for me, it was just a good reminder of, what that can be like, that those moments don't have to be pressure or you trying to live out your, fantasies of what you wish you were or what you wish your kids were, but you can just support your kids and let them be themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's a good example. It doesn't need to be all or nothing, right? And because we're probably going to have a lot of dads listening here, where it is, I think of hockey families, right? Where they're on the road every weekend, and this. We're not saying that it's bad. We're not saying that actually you shouldn't have your kids in team sports. In fact, I think studies even say that team sports are one of the ways that kids develop a lot of these characters that we're aiming to build in people. I think the question is are we willing to reframe sports as not like a ladder to climb, but an opportunity to grow? And the quote that you gave, Dean, was the whole idea of viewing the ice rink or the field as a classroom. And I think just this whole podcast is about reframing, right? It's not throwing it out. It's just reframing it as what are we ultimately going for here?
Yeah.
Dean, any final thoughts or comments from you, Dean, or Chris, before we jump into the episode?
Yeah, I really appreciated the conversation because it's a unique topic that there's not a lot that you can find out there as a Christian parent, and so lean in and listen if you're at that age or stage, just think about how you can use these kinds of opportunities as intentional moments to disciple and to model what it means to be a Christ follower.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of gold nuggets, a lot of just really great moments of wisdom in this conversation. So I'm excited for the guys to hear it.
Hey guys, before we jump into the interview, I do want to tell you about our new sponsor that we are really excited about. We are partnering with the Canadian Bible Society, and they're a part of the United Bible Societies. Have you heard of these guys? The fellowship of 150 Bible societies in 240 countries. Man, they translate, publish, and distribute the Bible. They help people engage with it in a meaningful way. And the Canadian Bible Society in particular, they do all sorts of things, but they also provide audio scriptures for the elderly in 52 languages, and they make scriptures available in over 75 languages. They've got that and so much more over at their website at biblesociety.ca. All right, let's tune into today's episode.
Well, Brian and Ed, welcome to the Impactus podcast. Delighted to have you guys with us. So tell us a little bit about where you're from. And Ed, in particular, you're going to have to explain your background because it's really unique.
Yeah, well, I'm actually my wife and 4 kids. My wife, Amy, and 4 kids live in Dayton, Ohio, just outside of Dayton. And we minister with athletes in action there, or have for 30 plus years. And that's how we wound up in that area. That's where our headquarters is at. Right now, I'm actually recording from a hospital room in Indianapolis, less than 24 hours after having surgery on my leg. I was in a pretty bad accident 20 years ago that is still having consequences for me today. And so we're trying to fix it up here. I'm here for 3 surgeries, actually. So I'm going to be here for a week. And they've never had anyone record a podcast from this hospital room. So this is a first for the Impactus Impactus listeners and for this hospital.
This is a first for us. We've never done a podcast with someone in a hospital. So this is fantastic. Ryan, where are you calling in from today?
Yeah, I'm just outside of the Grand Rapids area in Michigan, small town called Lowell. Live here with my wife, 3 kids. We have been on staff with Athletes in Action for 17 years now. We're also high school cross-country coaches.
Fantastic. So we're going to talk a little bit about your new book, Away Game, and fantastic read. And I want everybody to get their hands on a copy of this because if you're a parent, you need to kind of wrestle with this topic. But tell me about what inspired this book. Like, where did it come from, and what did you hope to kind of to communicate in essence through the book?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you where it came. Let me tell you where it came from, and then Brian, you tell them what we were trying to communicate by it. So Brian and I used to work together about a decade ago on Athletes in Action website. That's the ministry that we work with, as we mentioned. And we were we were thinking about how the gospel relates to sport, and our main ministry is to college athletes. But about a decade ago, we became coaches ourselves of youth teams, and we had kids that were playing youth sports. And we realized that we needed help in how to think Christianly about what we were doing at a youth level. You know, it's one thing to talk about it with college or professional athletes, but what does it look like to live the faith out with, 6-year-old soccer players and coaches and parents, and realize we were struggling with that ourselves. And we definitely could look around and see how parents around us were struggling, and that there seemed like there was this whole industry that had arisen in youth sports that was bringing its own value system that was very contrary to what we were trying to be about as Christians. So that's what got us thinking about it, and realized there really wasn't anything written, and still hasn't been much directed to Christians for how to navigate the youth sports world. So that's where it came from. B, why don't you talk about what we're hoping to get done in it?
Yeah, we kind of listed out like what are options available for Christians right now who are involved in youth sports. We could completely assimilate to culture, which Romans 12 is going to tell us, and that you probably don't want to do that.
Yeah.
We could completely pull out of culture and form our own holy huddles and our own leagues, but God has placed us where we're at for a specific reason at this specific time. And so we kind of liken what's going on in youth sports and a potential parent reaction to it to what happened with Daniel in the Bible. He was living in Babylon, a very, very secular culture, and he found ways to live faithfully in the midst of a culture that was essentially gospel averse. And so what would it look like for us as parents to be essentially in the world of sport, but not of the world of sport? And that's what we're trying to do with the book, is we're saying, hey, you can still be involved in youth sports. We both have been involved in sports ministry for a combined 50 years. So we like sports a lot. We're not saying to get out of sports, but we're saying there's probably a different way that we can go about doing it. And so one of the things that we're hoping readers will figure out early on is we're not out to shame anybody or make anybody feel guilty about how much money they have spent or how little they've spent on youth sports. What we're saying is, regardless of where you find yourself, what you have given yourself over to is you have a front row seat essentially to watch your kid experience every single emotion in sport. And the book is ultimately a discipleship book, Dean. Like, that's what we're hoping parents will walk away with. What I'm investing in youth sports is actually discipleship opportunities for my kids. I just need to approach it with a different set of eyes.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that you've written into a space that many parents struggle with. And yet there's not a lot of research or writing that actually equip. And so when I read it, it was like this really fit our ministry, a ministry to men, and trying to equip dads and parents to live better and be better disciplers. Now, where did the name Away Game come from? Because I think there's a larger connotation than just, the sports analogy of away games. But where did that come from?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways we want people to think about it. One is it's this like we're strangers in a foreign land here as Christians living in this world, that in a sense every time I wake up, I'm waking up to play an away game. Like God has created everything around me, but he's given dominion of this earth right now over to the enemy for a certain period of time. And so as I'm walking about, I need to realize, man, I am on home turf because God created it, but there's other factors at play here that I need to be aware of. And for Christians in sport, I think one of the biggest issues is we get into this youth sports environment, and we expect it to be like a home game of like everything's going to go our way. We have high expectations. Our hope is big, but it's more like an away game, right? Like it is an environment that is hostile. It's unpredictable. And so what would it look like if we stepped into these spaces realizing like, okay, it's supposed to be uncomfortable. We are going to experience bad calls, and there are going to be maybe even spiritual forces that are there at play here that we would never even think about. And so just wanting to open our eyes to say, hey, we're not sitting on the new earth right now. It's the already not yet. And so let's be mindful of that.
Yeah, that's great.
And Brian already mentioned the whole Daniel motif. Like we really are drawn upon that. Daniel was in an away game situation. He was on on foreign territory. And so what does that mean? It means we need to be more intentional. Let's throw that word on the table. To be intentionally aware, like Brian already said, that there's a different value system at work here. We need to check ourselves and make sure that we're not getting too swept up in it. But also then to be intentional about what does it look like to be the hands and feet of Jesus in this space as a parent, as somebody who's trying to, help our kids to walk with God, but also how we interact with other parents, how we interact with coaches, how we interact with referees, the other fans. We need to think about that. And most of us don't. Again, let's just be honest about that. Most of us just show up after work and we pay our money to get into the game. And then we just start acting whatever way we're going to act. And so we're saying, let's take a time out, realize it's an away game. Let's prepare a little differently each time we step into it.
Yeah. That's a great foundational understanding, I think, for parents to recognize that, as Christians, we live out of the values of a different kingdom. And so wherever we walk, wherever we interact on the sports field, at work, we need to bring that perspective into that. Yeah, you and I, just before we started the recording, Ed talked a little bit about some of the deeper issues that I think parents, dads in particular, can wrestle with when it comes to sports. You've got a great reference in the book around the Napoleon Dynamite, one of my favorite movies. And just that whole Uncle Rico kind of working through things in their past and sometimes trying to live out your past in your present through your kids. And some of the problems that can create. So talk to me a little bit about that and what you've observed and how we can just, I guess, understand it, but be better through that.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of thoughts on what my own experience has been with myself. Brian, I'm going to pass it to you though first. Talk about the whole Uncle Rico thing and even what you discovered in seeing the video online and seeing some of the comments. I've loved how you talked about that.
Yeah, and so if you're unfamiliar with this amazing film, Uncle Rico is kind of sitting on the back porch with his nephew Kip, and he starts with like, "How much you want to bet I can throw a football over that mountain?" And then he just kind of like gazes off into the mountain range, and he gets really introspective, and he says, "Man, if Coach would have put me in senior year, we'd have won state. Not a doubt in my mind." And then he starts talking to Kip about if Kip thinks time machines are real, because Rico's honestly thinking like, man, if I could just go back and fix everything. And he begins to go through like, man, my life would be different. I'd have a mansion. I'd have a wife, all of this stuff. and you just see him trailing off. And it was really interesting. We pulled this clip from YouTube and we were looking at the comment section, and it's a bunch of like 40, 50, 60-year-old dudes commenting, and they all said the same thing. When I watched this as a teenager in my 20s, I thought it was hilarious. But now I like almost have tears in my eyes because I get Uncle Rico. I get where he's coming from. And so it's almost turned into this like tragic comedy where it is hilarious. But if you're a little bit more seasoned in life now, you're like, yeah, I kind of get it. If coach would have given me different opportunities when I was a freshman, my life would probably be drastically different than it is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you end up projecting that onto your kids and onto other kids in ways that you just never saw coming. And so I would say that having kids, and everybody knows this, if you're married, that exposes a bunch of stuff in your life as a man. And then you add kids to the equation, you go down to a whole nother level of exposure, you know? And so there's a lot of stuff growing inside of me that I don't like, that needs to be sanctified. If we can keep using Christian words here, it needs to be taken out and set apart and changed, transformed, like Brian talked about earlier. And being involved in youth sports is like a cauldron of exposing my anger issues. It brings out my past regrets that I'm trying to bring into the future. It brings out my fears that I have about an imagined future for my child. That a future that's really outside of my control, but that I very much want to control. It brings out my desire to project, what I wish my life had been onto my kid, and trying to protect them maybe from some of the things that I felt and experienced in my past that I don't want them to have to experience. There's just so much that ends up coming out. Like, and why do I feel such anger in a 6-year-old soccer game where the kids don't even understand what they're doing? But a parent will say something over, across the other sideline, and I find myself wanting to scream at them, or I want to yell at them. There's something inside of me that needs to be looked at as a man. Again, that's hard talk. It's hard to do that sometimes. And Brian and I even said, really, the next book needs to be very maybe directly to men, or at least towards the parents, of how do we check the issues that are really going on inside of us. But we've said to each other, nobody wants to read that book, because it's too vulnerable. It hurts too much. There's a lot of stuff in there we don't want to look at. And yet, if we're going to do a better job with our kids, it's going to have to start with us. And that's why we've entitled one of the chapters that it starts with you. You got to be willing to look at that stuff, bring it out into the light, let Jesus work on it. Even as you're trying to be your kid's discipler, you got to let yourself be discipled too.
And we haven't talked about this, Ed. It's like sports used to be this space where we could almost get away from life, and I want to say it's a vacation by any means, but we could let our guard down and relax and have fun. But the way sports has transformed over the last 50 years, especially the youth sports space, it's now become this retreat almost to unhealthiness. We used language before that it's involvement in sport today probably malforms us, if we're being honest. Like, it's not forming us more into the likeness of Christ. It's not incredibly neutral where we can just go, enjoy, have fun, and then go home. What comes out of us often at games is revealing that this is like often a toxic environment for us to be in, but the toxicity is coming from us. Like, we're the ones who are bringing all this stuff into the sports environment. And at the end of the day, it's making life miserable for our kids.
Yeah.
Well, Dean, can we put some language on that even before you transition, just so people understand what we mean? Winning, for example, winning is all that matters now. Right. Winning is all that matters. There's no other value that stands above winning. That's a problem. Your performance is what dictates your identity. How you feel about yourself, or how you even should view yourself, and ESPN's been teaching us to do this for years, okay, is totally tied to your performance. You don't have an identity as an athlete apart from how you perform today. Just those two things alone just are just dripping with toxicity and anti-gospel vibe. And we got a whole list of other ones like that. So again, we're that's been there for a long time. We're not saying then that all sports are evil, but we're saying that culture, as Brian said, is malforming us. And if we don't think about it, it's making us into something we don't want to be. So we have to counter that.
Yeah.
We have to be counter formational and intentional again to both for ourselves and our kids to say sport culture is teaching you to put yourself in the center of the narrative.
Yeah.
We actually want to love and see other people.
Yeah.
Like Jesus did, which we could talk more about. So what does that look like in our space? So just that's what we're after.
Yeah, I've got a dozen questions and comments going in my mind. I was thinking, even around the fun piece and the escape that sports used to have. I just my mind went back to, a baseball field in little town in Canadian town playing baseball, and just you escape. You're in the World Series all of a sudden, and it's fun, and it's and the sports world, it seems, has stripped a lot of that away. Talk to me a little bit more. Like we've talked about what that does to, our own souls as parents and the dangers. But what is it doing to the kids, our children, when they're exposed to that kind of pressure or environment where it's win at all costs, where I'm projecting on them, where I've got to look a certain way, I've got to be the person, what's it doing to the next generation?
Yeah, it's like bringing a professional model down to a 10-year-old level is really what we're doing, Go ahead, Brian, talk about that.
Yeah, what's it doing to our kids? It's causing them to quit at astronomical rates. And so it is, the latest statistic is still around 70% of kids quit sports by the age of 13. So to even think about how unfortunate that is before kids hit the physical peak of their body, like when they should be at their potential as they get older, they're calling it quits. And they're able to pinpoint it. Researchers have, using this one simple word. It's not fun anymore for them. They're quitting because it's not fun. And why is it not fun? It's again, let's say this, well-intentioned adults. We don't think people are just out to make money off kids intentionally. It's well-intentioned adults who probably have their own issues, but we're making it miserable for our kids. And so here would be an example of what's at stake. I was just texting this to Ed a couple days ago. We have 5 freshman boys at our house for a sleepover. They have a fantasy football draft that night. And so my son and 4 of his best buds, like star quarterback of the football team is there, stud cross-country runner, really good baseball player. And so really good athletes are at our house. They're sitting on top of my garage roof as the sun is setting, and they're no joke. They're playing Duck, Duck, Goose together. They're playing like a silly childhood game. Why? Because that's what boys do when they're just left alone. They're having fun. They're making up their own games. They're reenacting childhood games. They're being silly.
They play.
They play.
They're playing.
And so that's what's happening, and that's what's at stake. As we over professionalize too early, we're really stripping kids of the ability to just play and have fun because we demand seriousness all the time.
Right.
We demand seriousness, and because it's become an industry, we have to pay exorbitant amounts to be involved. And I don't know what it's like up in Canada, but definitely down here, you're paying thousands of dollars to be part of something. It used to be seasonal, where you would play for 6 weeks. 2 months at most, you'd be in your sport. And now the demand is to year round. As a 10-year-old, you got to be year round in this sport. It used to be that you would just stay local and, be right in the neighborhood or maybe in the city next door. But now you got to cross state lines, and sometimes you're flying out of country to play. And that's just become part of the process. And so the research shows, and Brian's done a great job of talking about this for years as he's been exploring the research, that creates pressure for kids. They see that, they feel it. They feel the intensity coming from parents on the sideline. They feel the constant correction that they're getting from every direction. They feel pressure on social media. They know the money that's being paid. They know that it's costing us something to have to travel, that every day of the week is shaped by sports. And they're inside. I mean, a 20-year-old can barely handle that. And we're trying to get 8-year-olds to process that and not be overwhelmed. And they may not ever be able to say it or articulate it, but they feel pressure from that to perform. It makes it miserable.
Yeah, and so what we're trying to do in the book is we're not complaining the whole time again. We're just trying to give language and help parents point it out when they see it, to give language to it, but then begin teaching them, how do you swim upstream against this? That this is the reality, but you don't have to live in this reality. There are tangible things that you can do to be different in this culture.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that stood out to me in the book. This is not just identifying the problem. You've actually you do a great job to diagnose it, but you give a prognosis and you give solutions and practical ways to address this. Do you think, like, as I'm hearing you, we all attribute things like technology and social media and the impact that's having on the next generations, their mental health and wellness. Does this have overlap here, with the pressure, with the youth sport industrial complex, as you called it? Is this contributing to that kind of pressure and mental unwellness for our kids?
No question. Absolutely it is. And, we have opportunity, like we said, we spend most of our time with college athletes. We were both just at a camp this summer with about 400 total athletes, where we talked to them about the beauty and the brokenness of sports. Without getting into all the details, what we end up coming away with is just realizing that most of these kids college athletes are resonating way more with the broken side of sports than they are the beauty. That it's just become a job. It's become something they are not enjoying, even though they're part of like the 0.5% of people who are talented enough and mentally wired in such a way to do this and potentially to bring glory to God with how they do it. But it's become this space that is just puts a bad taste in their mouth. There was something else I was going to say about that. And we should say this. Brian and I both come from pretty deep sports backgrounds. We haven't said that. Brian was a cross-country runner at Wake Forest. I played for a second at the collegiate level, but played professionally overseas through my 20s in basketball. Like, we're sports dudes. We're not participation trophy guys. We're grinders. We're like, strive for excellence. Let's win. And yet we just realized that has become, it's being practiced in such a way today that it's become just super unhealthy. It's just become super unhealthy.
If you use a metaphor like if a balloon could represent the mental health and resiliency of any athlete, pro athletes should be able to handle more pressure put into that balloon than most anybody else before it's going to pop. They've learned how to absorb it and play with it. They can withstand a lot of pressure. But as you go down to amateur and college and high school and middle school and youth, the ability to withstand the amount of pressure that's put into something like that before it pops should be less and less, right? That just makes the most sense. But what we've done is we've taken an entire professional model of how to do sports, and we've just placed it right on the youth sports industrial complex with our kids. And we're saying, no, our kids can handle the same amount of pressure as these stud athletes. And again, what we're finding is you can only blow that balloon up so much before it pops. And the popping would be them just saying, like, I'm done. It's not fun for me. I can't handle it anymore.
Well, the popping could be that you're no longer in relationship with your kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of their experience in sports. We've been saying this, Brian and I have been saying this for years. Look, our goal is that we live in such a way with our kids that they want to come home for Thanksgiving when they're 25 or Christmas or whatever, that we're still in relationship with them. And I've seen too many relationships between parents and kids just get frayed because of their youth sport experience. We think the gospel is actually an answer to the mental health crisis, even just to come back to what you were bringing up, Dean. The whole idea of grace and truth being able to live in the same space, where grace is saying that you're accepted and you're okay in spite of your performance. There's nothing that you can do that's going to cause you to be outside the family, so to speak.
Right.
And that just gets continually reiterated in the gospel from Jesus. But there's also truth. Like, we can be honest about where we're at in this process and honest about how good we are or aren't. Truth about what's broken. We can tell the truth when sometimes we need to apologize. We were wrong for doing this. Truth comes in all kinds of different flavors. But when you combine those two, this unconditional acceptance, like for real, and you mix it in with truth, you find shalom in the midst of that. You find peace, which is contrary to mental health anxiety. That's what we mean by that. Sometimes there's other things going on with mental health, but at least that anxiety that comes from the stress of sports, it should be fixed by the gospel and us living the gospel with our kids.
Yeah, and in a sport culture that just teaches you are only accepted if you perform. Like, this is how we swim upstream against it. We teach our kids that, no, you are accepted regardless of how you perform today, that you can actually play from a position of acceptance instead of for acceptance. But we need to teach that. If we're not teaching it, then they're just going to learn the world's strategy from who's ever coaching them, the other parents. So we need to actually be the ones who are intentionally discipling our kids through this process.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm the word identity just pops in mind. Like, it just, as parents, living out a God identity. The identity that's been placed in us. But also, if we let that go astray or off track, we can allow our identity, but the identity of our kids, to be formed in all kinds of weird places that won't be helpful or beneficial to them in the long run. Now, you do a really great example. We talked about briefly just before we started recording about the ride home as one of the more formative and destructive, but also opportunistic, if parents leverage moments like that as one to talk about that for us.
Well, let me say this as a transition to that, actually, Dean, from what we just talked about. We've been talking a lot, Brian and I have, about the whole prodigal son story.
Yeah.
So what is that story? The son goes away. He lives horribly, makes a ton of mistakes, horrible decisions, insults the father on his way out. There's just bad performance. He realizes that he needs to come back home. He bumps into two different characters. Okay. One is a father whose arms are open wide and says, "You are welcome here because you are my son."
Right.
And that identity trumps your behavior. It trumps all that's gone on. Come back home where you belong and start over again. The other character is his brother, who has his arms folded and says he has no business coming home because of his performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the question, is what are our kids, in the context of youth sports, are our kids bumping into that father day after day whose arms are open wide, or are they bumping into the brother who's saying, you need to be corrected, you need to be fixed before you can come back here and count yourself among us again? So Brian, the car ride home is like, it's where they're meeting one or the other of those characters every single day. Okay, so Brian, go ahead, talk about it.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the phrase "all is well that ends well," there's actually some psychological research behind that shares the truth of it, that how things end, how we experience the ending of things impacts the totality of how we experienced all of it. And so for a kid, you think about they're at a basketball game, however it goes, but then they get in a car ride to go home. And let's say this again, well-intentioned parents. Like, we're not saying that all parents are trying to like ream out their kids. It's parents like Ed and I who have grown up in an ESPN culture, and we like to analyze. Like, we like to say, like, this went well, this did. Let's talk about, like, we like sports. We're excited about it. We want to talk about it. But our kids experience that in the back seat as they're coaching me. They're criticizing me, even if that's not our intention. They're critiquing certain things. And so if they get in the car and the first thing they're hearing is, I didn't measure up to their standards. I can hear it in their tone. I can hear it in their words. How is that going to impact how they remember their youth sport experience? If they look back on the game last Saturday and how they remember it is what happened in the car ride home. If that begins to be a consistent drumbeat every single time they get in the car, and they know mom and dad, again, well-intentioned, are just going to drill them and coach them and tell them what they did well and what they could do better next time, it's going to be exhausting for them.
I do it all the time. The time.
Yeah.
Again, you already said this. My natural impulse is I've been sitting there for 2 hours making my list. of things that we can fix, especially
But
if
what
it's
do they
in my
want?
sport.
What do they want, Ed?
Well, Brian, I thought this was brilliant. Brian started talking about this a few years ago, and it's really been helpful for me. And he just said, I get in the car and I ask my kids, is there anything from the game you want to talk about today? That's just a brilliant thing to have in your back pocket. Now, that's going to mean I have to accept whatever their answer is, which is, guess what? Most of the time, the answer is no. They don't want to talk about the game. Now, we're not talking about bad behavior. If they were being an idiot on the field or the court or whatever, we're going to talk about that right away. If they were, disrespectful to the coach or the ref, or they acted in a certain way towards an opponent or something, we're going to talk about that right away. But most of the time, what I'm asking them is, do they want to talk about fixing what was wrong in their performance, or what they could do to get on the court more, or, to get more playing time? And usually they don't. They just want to listen to music. They want to go get ice cream. They want to move on to the next thing. It's just a game to them.
They don't care about it as much as we do, which is weird to say, but they don't. They don't have as much invested into this as we do.
As we do. They don't care about winning. They usually don't even care that much about getting better. Now, again, it's different between a 6-year-old and a 16-year-old. That may change some as they get older. But the goal would be to treat them in such a way between 6 and 16 that they're still playing. Brian already said most of them have quit by 13. Mm-hmm. So how do is there a time for processing the game? Maybe somewhere else? Yes. We're not saying we can't bring it up somewhere else, or just say, can I give you feedback? Are you interested at any point in seeing what I'm seeing on the court, or hearing what I'm seeing? You can ask that question again, but the car ride home is like the worst possible place to do that. And it's the place that we all usually turn to first, because we've been sitting there for 2 hours to unload it all on them.
Man, that's so good. It's such a sobering, reminder of the responsibility we have, and how we can steward them well, or we can not steward them well. My kids, all but one now, are moved on. We've had 4 girls, and we've had various levels of activities through their journeys. But I look back at those car rides after some of their lessons or competitions and things like that, and I regret some of those moments, right? Because I didn't take advantage of them, and sometimes they were either in critique or not encouraging, or just letting them breathe again. So my question kind of comes around to, how can parents not be that kind of pressure parent, or, the screaming parent in the stand going after the umpire or the referee or the other coach? Or what kind of things, practices, or things can parents apply to their own lives to be, take the pressure off their kids and model what it means to be a disciple of Jesus?
Yeah. I would start by saying, if our kids are going to make it in sports, however we would define it, for a lot of us, we want our kids to get the next starting spot or opportunity on the next team. If they're going to make it, it's going to be because God has uniquely gifted them with this blend of skill, but also a mentality that desires to get better, that they don't need mom and dad pushing them to do it. And so to start with this, and I've had to coach myself in this, if my kids are going to excel in sport, it's going to be because they have to want it, not because I'm pushing them, or not because I'm giving them specific opportunities. They need to wake up and really embrace the grind. I thought my son, who's going to be a freshman in high school this year, I thought this summer he was just going to train and get ready for football. He loves football. He slept in almost every single day. There was optional practices. He would rarely go to any of them. And I wanted to be like, and maybe I should have, I don't know. I wanted to be like, you need to be at these things, but he didn't want to go. And so is he going to be a great football player? I don't know, but if he's going to be, it's got to be because he wants it, not because I'm waking him up at 5:45 in the morning, pushing him out the door.
And that's hard. Let's just say that. That's
absolutely.
really, really hard. And you almost feel like you're failing as a parent, but you're not. That's part of the message that Brian and I are bringing. Again, remember, we work with college athletes. They didn't become college athletes because of cajoling parents and nagging parents. They became college athletes because they were gifted and they wanted it, just like what Brian said. Do you believe that? Can you believe that as a parent? Because if I can, then it really does relieve the pressure, again, of this imagined future, and I'm in control of the future of their athletic journey. We're saying you're really not, but you actually do play a much bigger role in their virtue formation. You really do. You play a much bigger role. In fact, we're gonna stand before God and not be measured on whether or not we created opportunities for our kids to start on the varsity team. We're going to be measured on whether or not we gave them opportunities to grow up in submission to the Lord, and knowing the way they should go and keeping to it. That's going to be way more of an issue for us. So we need to maybe replace some of our performance evaluation, skill performance, and replace that with let's watch for character. Let's watch for how they're behaving. Let's watch for how easily they quit. Let's watch for how they go through the handshake line after the game and what their demeanor is. Let's watch what kind of a teammate are they being to other people? Are they learning the other kids' names so that they can invest in them in some way? That's a completely different list of concerns that most of us, again, no sport culture is going to say this is what you should pay attention to. They're only going to encourage us to pay attention to skill.
Yeah.
So we have to replace that. Brian, I kind of took that away from you. Keep going with what you were saying.
No, that's good. That was good. And maybe to add on, then Dean, you can transition next. For us to explain that to our kids, like, did you see the kid at the end of the bench? It's helpful if we start looking at the kid on the end of the bench too. So for me to be able to say, hey, did you notice Joey today just seemed like he was down? It takes me as the parent sitting in the stands noticing that Joey was down today instead of being so locked in, focused on my kids and their performance. It starts with me being able to look around and just maybe take inventory of everything else that's going on that is opportunities for my kids' discipleship. But it starts with me noticing that. And it's really hard when all I want to do is just watch my kid play.
Right.
I saw an Atlantic article that was titled "Stop Trying to Raise Successful Kids and Start Trying to Raise Kind Ones."
Nice.
Fascinating article that where most parents would say they want their kids to care and be kind to other people. Most parents would say that, but then when you interview the kids, they say, well, our parents are actually way more concerned about performance than they are my kindness. I just think that's super interesting. I understand why that is. And the guts of this article is your kids will actually be more successful in life if they learn to be kind, not if they learn to hit the outside corner, as a pitcher or learn how to take time off their 40. They'll be successful if they learn how to be kind to other people. It's actually a fascinating article.
Wow. So, guys, I want to kind of wrap up the conversation today with an individual question to each one of you. And Ed, I want to start with you, but to the dad who's listening, who has maybe put an awful lot of pressure on their kids in the realms of sports, or maybe has projected a lot from their past and trying to live out their wishes and desires through the kids today. How would you encourage them? And then Brian, over to you. But for the new dad, the young dad who's trying to navigate how to start with their kids and just set up some healthy rhythms and practices, how would you encourage them today? So Ed, over to you first.
Yeah. Great questions. And I've just, the whole time you were asking the question to me, Dean, I was thinking grace. We've already said that. Like, you have to give yourself grace. I need to give myself grace as a dad. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, that's a good place to start, is just to admit, I really don't know what I'm doing as a dad. I'm trying to figure it out as I go. We don't get that much help from the church, unfortunately, which is part of the reason we want to have this conversation more in the church. We don't get help with how to navigate youth sports from other places. So, okay, give yourself a break. You made some mistakes probably along the way. And maybe one of the first things I need to do is just apologize to my kids. And I've done that, especially to the older ones, as I realize that some of my behaviors, some of the pressure I've created, I've just admitted to them that I feel fear, or I feel like I want them to be something that I want them to be in sports for these reasons, but they don't have to be. Like, I've literally had those conversations with my kids, and it's actually been really healing, and it causes them to want to talk to me then. Like, then they do trust me then to talk with me. If I can back off and say, I'm going to try to relieve the pressure from you. I want you to have a great experience. So I start asking them, you know what my question is? Did you have fun? I'm asking him all the time, did you have fun after practice, after games? My son played his first golf tournament yesterday. He was terrible. He's a freshman in high school. He was terrible. I got to watch someone FaceTime. My wife was FaceTiming me. And afterwards, I asked him if he had fun, and he did. In the midst of being terrible, he had fun. Okay. So that's great. Why? Talk to me about that. What was fun for you? And, he enjoyed being with the kid he was playing with. And it was just fun to be he was playing with different guys instead of just playing with his brother all the time. And so it's like, okay, let's just talk about that. I don't need to fix his golf swing right now, or whatever. So there's going to be ton more opportunities for you, Dad, to do that, to ask a different set of questions, trust God with their future, and you just worry about being that loving father that the prodigal comes home to, whose arms are open wide and says every day, I just loved watching you out there doing what you were doing. Even if you were sitting on the bench, I'm just proud of you for being there. And if you want more help, we can get more help, but that's not what it's about for me. I just want to be here as your dad.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And I may have to work through some issues to get there, which we already said that. I might have to work through some issues. And so I'm having conversations with my friends. Like, we got to talk about this with our friends and talk about what the struggle is. And again, that's what we like about Daniel. He wasn't doing it alone. He had some friends, that he was standing against Nebuchadnezzar with, or offering alternative ways of being. I need that in the church, and I've actually got that. Like, I got other guys I'm talking out my stuff with and saying, how did you do this differently with your older son or whatever? And that's been super helpful.
Yeah, that's good.
But we got to be vulnerable and open to changing.
Awesome. Brian.
Yeah, to the new dad, I would say one of my great joys in life has been just watching my kids play sports. That the joy decreases the more pressure I put on them, even if I'm not communicating that pressure to them. When I begin to have expectations that are attached to their games, then that pressure begins to mount, and it makes me quite miserable. I have the most fun when I can just take a breath, sit down in the stands, and watch them play. And so I need to remind myself too, through this process, even if I have a 10-year-old who's playing sports, how he plays at 10 years old is not a predictor of how he's going to play when he's 18 years old. And so whether he's really good or horrible, that honestly has no bearing on his future in sport. Right now, the main goal is that when he's 11, he would want to come back and play again. When he's 12, he would want to come play again, because there's intrinsic goodness in sport. I don't want my kid to keep playing because then by the time he's 18, he might have a shot at a scholarship. No, I really believe that the very act of playing sports is intrinsically good. When my kids are playing in the yard, I'm not thinking, oh, good, they're training in their muscles, or they're working on their offhand, or this is really helping their brain. No, it's just good because it's good. When my kids play duck, duck, goose on top of the roof, it's good because it's good. There's no value I need to attach to that. And so I just need to remind myself the goal is, let's get them to come back and play again next year, and let me enjoy the process of watching it as long as I can.
Yeah. It's also dangerous, dude. And if Children's Services saw you letting your kids and all the neighbor kids play up on the roof of your barn, you would probably get in trouble. So let it be known, we're not advocating that.
We're not give away my location. That's right. Somewhere in the Grand Rapids area.
Keep your kids off the roofs. But this has been brilliant, guys, and well done on writing into a space that I think needs some gospel presence and needs to be representative of the heart of the father, right? To welcome kids home at the end of the day, and a safe place where they can thrive, have fun again, and we can model for the world around us what it means to be a Jesus follower. Where can people get a copy of the book? Amen. And where can they follow you guys?
Yeah, any online retailer. We usually just send people to Amazon's the quickest place to get it. And you can find both of us. We hang out online at thechristianathlete.com. We do a lot of our writing there. So you can get the book there, and a bunch of other resources at the intersection of faith and sport for parents, coaches, and athletes.
Fantastic. Well, I have to say thank you to both of you for joining us today, and especially for you come first from the hospital. But well done, sir. You did
we
great.
made it. Thank you. It was a great
MVP. Let's go.
Great conversation, Dean. Yeah, great questions. This was very enjoyable.
Well, thanks again. And dads, if you're listening, get your hands on a copy of Away Game. It'll be a life changer and may just change the lives of your kids as well. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.